Hi, PerspectaWeather.com meteorologist Paul Orion here on Thursday, January 23rd. Well, all systems are go for a weekend storm system to impact the mid-Atlantic region and the northeast U.S. It looks like predominantly a rain event for the I-95 corridor region from D.C. to Philly to New York City, even all the way up to Boston. Only the higher elevation interior locations of the mid-Atlantic and the northeast U.S. look like at this time that they'll get some significant snowfall, especially up across northern New England. Places like New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine look like they're in store for a decent snow event in this weekend time period. The rain could actually become heavy at times in the I-95 corridor region from Friday night into Saturday morning especially. Again, that could include D.C., Philly, and New York City, for example, with that soaking rain event. Now, there still is a possibility that on the backside of this low pressure system, some wraparound precipitation changes over to sleet or snow in some of the I-95 corridor region, especially from Philadelphia north and east to include New York City and Boston. That would be Saturday night, early Sunday time frame. Certainly nothing significant. Then Sunday afternoon, basically a windy, cold day, maybe some snow shower activity that we'll have to worry about as well. Well, let's take a look ahead before we focus in on the weekend event. A couple things I want to point out here going forward here, let's say over the next 5 to 10 to 15 days or so. First of all, one of the things we'll monitor is a stratospheric warming event that looks like it'll take place over the next 10 days or so. This is something we monitor this time of the year. Sometimes a stratospheric warming event over the polar regions can lead to cold air outbreaks into the mid-latitudes, such as into the central and eastern U.S., and there is one that is unfolding here. This is the current look at the temperatures way up at the top of the atmosphere at the 10 millibar level. This is stratospheric temperatures basically, and we're looking kind of at a top-down view with the North Pole right in this region right here and the U.S. down here. So again, this is kind of a top-down view of the temperature pattern as we stand right now, January 23rd, way up in the stratosphere. And this is rather typical to see colder than normal temperatures or cold temperature, the coldest temperatures near the pole. And again, this is kind of a polar vortex that is not too unusual for this time of the year to see something like that. Let's now move ahead 10 days from the GFS forecast with respect to these 10 millibar temperatures. Well, here we go, quite a difference. 10 days out, we have a significant warming event taking place in the polar region. Still a polar vortex. It gets kind of displaced a little bit onto the other side of the pole, but quite a significant change. It goes from this currently to this in 10 days, and we'll see if that sets off a chain of events that will bring some cold air masses into the central and eastern U.S. Again, it looks like a stratospheric warming event will take place over the next 10 days to 2 weeks or so. Well, now let's look ahead 5, 10, 15 days or so by using the ensemble run of the GFS last night at 0, we're looking at 500 millibar height anomalies, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday. This is just a follow-up discussion. First of all, we have higher heights than normal over Canada right now, with some lower heights across the southern U.S. And again, we don't have that strong ridging over the south, over the southeast U.S. that would have southwesterly flow coming into the U.S., and we don't have persistent northwesterly flow bringing in Arctic air. So basically kind of going back and forth between below normal to above normal to below normal to above normal. Let's move forward here. This is the average, by the way, over the current 5-day period, and we're looking at average height anomalies for 5-day increments, and we'll move forward out a couple of weeks. And here we go. Just keep an eye on this pattern here. And this is now out to days 4 to 8, which is January 26th to the 31st, so all the way to the end of the month. Fairly similar, higher heights than normal over Canada, with kind of an undercutting jet streak over here across the southern U.S. into the eastern U.S. And Watch what happens here in the eastern U.S. as we move into the month of February. It really begins to intensify here as we get into the early part of February. Now we're into days 11 to 15, which is that very first week of February, and it really develops a pretty significant looking upper level trough over the eastern U.S. So this will be interesting. There definitely are some signs of an interesting weather pattern beginning later next week into the weekend, and we're at that point talking about the very beginning of the month of February. In other words, when I say interesting, I mean a little bit colder pattern here for the I-95 corridor region. There are a couple, at least one storm threat, maybe two storm threats later next week that'll be a closer call in terms of snow in the I-95 corridor as compared with this upcoming event Friday night and Saturday. Well, let's kind of take a look forward kind of the same way, using the ensemble run of the GFS from 0Z last night. Now, instead of looking at 500 millibar height anomalies, we're looking at 850 millibar temperature anomalies to give an idea of what to expect over the next 5, 10, 15 days or so. First of all, look at what's going on over Alaska. They are certainly experiencing a very cold month of January. I saw a report yesterday that this could be one of the coldest months ever in Anchorage, Alaska. We heard all last year about how warm it is in Alaska. We're certainly having a cold winter season, and usually when Alaska is very cold and below normal, the eastern U.S. is not, and that has been generally the case here over the last few weeks. But let's move forward here. Again, this is the average over a 5-day increment. The current 5 days above normal temperatures over Canada, at least the lower part of the atmosphere, a little bit below normal. Florida was very cold yesterday relative to normal. They're warming up quite nicely over the next couple of days. But let's keep moving forward, and keep in mind we saw that intensifying trough in the eastern U.S. as we moved into the early part of February. Watch what kind of impact it may have on the temperatures here going forward. Now we're out days 6 to 10 from January 28th to February 2nd. Colder than normal conditions here throughout much of the eastern U.S., and still continuation of that over Alaska. But then as we move forward into the early part of February, this sticks around, and in fact it becomes perhaps a little bit more impressive here by the time we go all the way out to days 12 to 16. Now this is February 3rd to February 8th, that average for a 5-day period. Colder than normal throughout much of the central and eastern U.S. Meanwhile, still very cold up across Alaska and Greenland. So despite the fact that they're below normal, possibility of below normal temperatures here in the eastern U.S. according to the ensemble run of the GFS. Now keep in mind, ensemble run of any model tends to smooth things out with time. So the fact that we're seeing these below normal temperatures way out days 12 to 16 of this magnitude means it could even be a little bit more intense than this on the colder than normal side here as we get into February. So there certainly are some signs for some interesting changes coming for the eastern U.S. Towards the end of next week and into the first part of February. Well, let's now get back to the current weather situation and specifically talk about the storm coming Friday night, Saturday, into Saturday night for parts of the northeast U.S. and we've talked about the location, the magnitude of the upper level feature here that will play a key role, and if that were to dig farther south and east, it would produce a colder solution for the immediate I-95 corridor region. That is not happening. Very consistent with the models in terms of first pushing that system over the Ohio Valley and then across interior sections of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast U.S. So let's move forward, and here's the bundle of energy that we're watching for this weekend event here. Now we're going into Friday morning. It starts way down across the south central U.S. It does kind of dive to the south and east at that in that time period. But then watch what happens. Kind of turns to the northeast, and by Saturday morning, again situated over the Ohio Valley, not farther south and east into, let's say, the Carolinas or the Virginias, and it continues to rotate around and basically move kind of an inland type of system here as we get into the day on Sunday. And again, this is one of the main reasons why we're expecting predominantly a rain event in the big cities, in the I-95 corridor region. And for snow, you have to really go up into the higher elevations, the interior locations of upstate PA, New York, and certainly interior sections of New England will do quite well from New Hampshire to Vermont to Maine. Now let's just kind of quickly move forward here. And again, an active pattern. We see an intensifying trough developing aloft, according to that ensemble run of the GFS, by late next week or the following weekend, which is the beginning of February. Here we are now going into the middle part of next week. Notice another wave of energy here showing up on the maps here up across the northern plains. That kind of dives to the south and east and combines with another wave of energy. Many details have to be ironed out here, but we do have a significant wave of energy that we'll have to monitor towards the end of next week. Now, there are some signs that this could end up being kind of split into two systems, one around the Thursday time frame, one around the Saturday time frame, or perhaps one bigger storm Friday into Saturday. It's just way too early to see, but we definitely have an energetic pattern here. Now we're all the way out to next Saturday. It's a week from this Saturday to next Saturday, which is actually the first day of the month of February, and it ends up being quite an impressive wave of low pressure in the upper part of the atmosphere by the end of next week or the following weekend, something we'll monitor over the next several days. Well, let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps from last night's 0Z operational GFS model run. This high pressure system, which has been in control for the past several days, producing dry but cold conditions here in the mid-Atlantic, in the Northeast, all the way down to Florida, as a matter of fact, sitting right on top of the region this morning. It basically says bye, moves off the eastern seaboard, and that opens the door for all this moisture out in the middle part of the country to start coming east. And here we go into the evening hours, and then on the day Friday, an initial wave of low pressure, supported by that wave of energy in the upper part of the atmosphere, will head towards the Ohio Valley. That ultimately will give way to a secondary system that forms right about over the Delmarva Peninsula, give or take a little bit of real estate there. And heavy rain is a possibility. It's looking more and more likely that there will be a period of significant rainfall Friday night, Saturday morning, thereabouts in the D.C., Philadelphia, New York City corridor. And here we go. Some decent rainfall here by Saturday morning. This is now would occur in the after midnight hours into the early morning hours on Saturday. Notice this initial wave over the Ohio Valley, and here we go. A secondary takes over, probably starts to form right over the Delmarva Peninsula, anywhere really from D.C. to Philadelphia. That secondary low will take over again with some significant rainfall over New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, Saturday morning, starting to wind down in D.C. Most of their rainfall will be Friday night and Saturday morning, maybe a shower Saturday afternoon. Philly and New York City could continue into the afternoon hours on Saturday. Notice the snow kind of limited to the higher elevations, interior locations of Pennsylvania, New York, and New England. And here we go. That storm actually kind of rotates around and stays inland. But this is the time period here now, Saturday night, where we'll see if any kind of wraparound precipitation can make it farther south and east into eastern Pennsylvania, let's say, because at this time it may be cold enough for sleet or snow. Nothing significant and nothing being depicted here by the GFS model, but I still think that's a possibility of perhaps a changeover from Philly north and east to New York City Saturday night into early Sunday, something we'll watch for. And then on Saturday itself, that low pushes away the basic northwesterly flow on the backside of the low pressure system, probably clouds in the morning, maybe some sun in the afternoon in the D.C., Philly, New York City, Boston corridor. And we'll have to watch out for some potential snow showers that may form in an unstable air mass here Sunday afternoon into Sunday evening. Another Arctic shot of air coming in for the early part of next week, but generally seasonal cold here as we begin the new week on Monday and Tuesday. Nothing significantly below normal. But again, can be some significant rainfall in the Mid-Atlantic region, especially the I-95 corridor region, Friday night, Saturday morning time frame. An active weather pattern will reestablish later next week into the following weekend, which takes us to the beginning of February. That's it for now. For PerspectaWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Orion.